Hi, my name is Katie and I miss fan forums. If you're new to this channel, I did not start playing video games until I was an adult, so I primarily use this space to talk about video games, discourse about them, give my opinions, and also do first-time Let's Plays of all of the titles that I'm getting to experience now. And I'm also a cosplayer. Something that video games have helped me with, though, is helped me get back into fandom after a really long time of being absent. There were definitely other things that helped me kind of get back into fandom, but as a millennial, I grew up in the times of the fan forums, LiveJournal. I was there for the birth of Tumblr. I was there for the birth of Twitter, like kind of saw it all happen in real time, YouTube. Like a lot of millennials that were growing up at the time that all of these things were launching, there were a lot of amazing, incredible fandom experiences I got to have that just don't exist anymore today. Or if they do, they've kind of evolved into different versions. I wanted to make this video because fandom and fandom culture have shaped my life in so many different ways. They've introduced me to lifelong friends, they've changed how I interact with media, and they've gotten me to think in really, really different ways. I wanted to take a trip down memory lane and share my experience growing up in fandom. I figure I'm probably not alone, and if you're watching this, either you have a similar experience and you want to take a trip down memory lane too, or maybe you didn't have this experience and you're somebody who came of age once all of these things were already established and you want to kind of hear about how fandom was back in the day. For reference, I got involved with fandom probably between ages like 11 and 12, and I'm still an active fandom participant today at 30. I remember looking up to adults in fandom when I was in middle school and high school and thinking it was amazing that people still participated in sharing their love for a piece of media no matter how old they were. So I hope that maybe this encourages anybody who is a little bit younger and thinks that you have to like give up on stuff that you love just because you are a certain age. Trust me, you very, very, very much do not. Also, yes, this is my sexy Garrus pillow. It was given to me by my bestie. I absolutely love it. If you want to stare at him throughout the entirety of this video, you absolutely can. Feel free. He is there as eye candy. If you like this content, if you want to see more from me, go ahead and click the like button down here and make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell so that way you always know whenever I upload a new video. We also have a Discord, so if you want to relive your fandom glory days or early days, or if you want to talk more about fandom experiences, link is in the description below. Feel free to join and say hi. And you can also find me all around the internet. Again, links are in the description below. But let's get into it and let's go through my history growing up in fandom. The early days. Before I'd really even started like poking around on the internet, I definitely had like plenty of what we would probably call fandom experience, simply like within my immediate friends group. Typically, these experiences were mostly centered around like book series that we really loved, and we would be talking to each other about what characters we wanted to get together. We'd be creating original characters or OCs in our favorite universes, and we would dream up scenarios about like ways that in which our favorite characters could interact, or scenarios we could put our favorite characters in and how they would react in those scenarios. Basically writing fan fiction, but just through discussion. So I kind of already had that experience, or was having that experience, and was familiar with, you know, becoming really attached to a piece of media or just becoming really excited about it and wanting to discuss it more. My mom used to watch CSI, the original one, Vegas, on TV all the time. And I don't really remember like when I watched my first episode of that. I'd often just kind of be in the same room with her and, you know, like she would be watching an episode. I don't remember, but it was certainly around 7th grade or toward the end of 6th grade. I was instantly hooked. I fell in love with the characters. I immediately picked out my favorites, and I immediately had like ship preferences. Sarah was my favorite character by a absolute long shot, but I also really loved Catherine. I loved Nick. I loved Greg. And my primary ships were Sarah Greg. Sarah Greg was like my OTP 100%. Like I just loved them so much. And then Catherine Warwick was like my other like ride or die ship. And then like on the side, like things that I would enjoy like talking about or that I would like read fic of occasionally. Like I'd read Sarah Nick occasionally, and I would also read Nick Greg. Like I enjoyed both of those on their own, but it was like, if I had to choose between Sarah Greg or like Nick and Greg and Sarah Nick, like I was gonna choose Sarah Greg every time, you know? And then Catherine and Warwick, like I did not ship them literally with anybody besides each other. Like, I was like, those two are made for each other. Like, I simply cannot see a relationship with anybody else for them. I also ended up like down the line, I was kind of into Nick and Sophia, which feels like a rare pair now that I talk about it, now that I like say it out loud. I feel like Nick Sophia is a rare pair, and I remember having trouble finding fic of it, but for whatever reason, like I also kind of enjoyed them. Also, Grissom Lady Heather was delicious, absolutely delicious. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And kind of just like very naturally, I was thinking about headcanons for these characters all the time. Like I was thinking about these characters in their world probably like 95% of my day. And I really, really wanted to kind of like find more ways to interact with other people who were just as deeply passionate about the show as I was. Now, I knew about the existence of forums. Like I had actually participated on a few other forums for book series before, so I knew that these things existed. So I knew that I kind of just had to like do some digging and find a CSI based one. I don't remember the name of it. I really wish that I do, because like I think about this forum all the time now as an adult and how like instrumental it was in shaping some of my early fandom experiences. But I eventually did find a CSI centered fan forum. And this was like, again, I had kind of participated in some other forums, but it wasn't really the same experience as my experience with the CSI fan forum. Like that was the first fan forum in which I was really, really just like awestruck by how well organized it was. So I signed up for an account, I made a profile, and I started kind of exploring this forum, and I immediately felt totally at home. I found the shipping sub forum, I found the Sarah and Greg topic, I found the Sarah topic, and just like it felt very easy to just dive into. I do remember a thread that I will literally never forget. There was actually one thread, and it was called Sarah Seidel Sunglasses Surprise. And I do not know how or why it started, but it was basically like every new episode that would air, if there was like a shot of Sarah wearing sunglasses, like everybody would put that image into the thread. There was no reason. It was just fun. And like things like that, I was like, this is so great. I love this. I'm having the best time. So this was my first time really and truly like engaging with fandom on the internet. Again, I had been in other fan forums, but they were very different to this one. This was the first place that I was really being able to kind of like jump into theory discussions, theorize about what could happen in future episodes, future seasons, talk about shipping theories. Like, were things actually going to become canon? Was it viable? Talking about like our headcanons for particular characters, just talking about the dynamics between all the different characters. People would also recommend fic. So people would recommend fic that was housed on fanfiction.net, which was, basically like the primary source for you to get fanfiction at this point in time. People would trade recommendations back and forth. It would kind of be like, oh, like I really loved this. You might like it too. And there were like suggestion threads and all of that. And it felt really, really, really nice. I was really finally able to like connect with people who loved a piece of media just as much as I did, and that wanted to like geek out over every little thing that popped up in scenes. I felt so incredibly thankful that I had found this space. Progression. So over the next year, I also ended up finding myself in NCIS fandom. I had started watching it during the season 3 premiere. I remember that my mom and I were watching CSI reruns. We were watching them on Spike TV. My mom was like, I'm gonna switch over to CBS because there's a season premiere of like a show that I like. And I remember being like, oh, like I'm so bummed that we can't watch like another CSI rerun. Like I really wanted to watch that. The show that she put on was the NCIS season 3 premiere, and I watched it and I was just like immediately connected to the characters and was like, lightning has struck again. Like the same things that I felt about CSI, I was like, oh my God, lightning is striking again. And I am like getting to feel this same thing about a show that I'm literally watching one episode of right now. Of course, naturally, the same thing happens. I immediately pick out my favorite characters. Like I immediately am like, this is who I ship. I am in NCIS brain rot for a good long time. And since I already kind of had my knowledge of, my knowledge and experience with the CSI fan forum, I was like, okay, bet, like I'm gonna go find the NCIS fan forums. This was 2005, so I found a few to engage with. The NCIS fan forums, like, I don't have as clear of a memory of like that particular forum experience as I do with the CSI one. The CSI one sticks with me so much because it was my first and because like it had so many memorable things like Saracidal sunglasses surprise, etc. The NCIS one was basically more of the same, and again, just like people really coming together to share headcanons and theories and like share photos and like talk about interviews where like the interviews that the actors did where they talk about, you know, what's going to potentially happen and all of that. And since I kind of now had the knowledge of fanfiction.net from my CSI fan forum experience, I was like immediately on fanfiction.net looking for Tony Ziva. Like, Tony Ziva was my OTP. Like, I still credit Tony Ziva for being like one of my greatest ship loves of all time. I did actually go back and try to rewatch NCIS as an adult. I don't necessarily recommend it. It did not age well at all. I think having like the lens that I do now of just like what kind of show that is, it made it harder for me to stomach. But like ultimately, the end of the day, I so deeply still love Tony and Ziva, and they were so important to me and so integral to me growing up that I'm like, I will always like love and cherish that experience. But one new thing that did come from this experience of being on the NCIS fan forums was I actually started to see the emergence of more and more fan videos. The videos that are basically like music videos, but with like clips of all of your favorite characters. If you're in fandom, you know what I'm talking about. I started seeing these for the first time and I was like, this is amazing. This is like music video, but with my favorite characters. Like, what's better? That's amazing. And like, of course it tickled my brain as well, because it's one of those things where it's like, I would be listening to a song and I'd be like, oh my God, this is so like Sarah Gregg. Like, they're so perfect for this song. Like, this perfectly describes their relationship. So to be able to then like see somebody actually setting scenes to songs like that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I consumed so many of these videos on a regular basis. I would like be so complimentary to all of the creators. Like, everybody was so kind on these forums too. Like, I didn't really experience any crazy like forum drama or anything of the nature. Like, basically for the entirety of my forum experience, it was people being really kind to each other, really nice, like hyping each other up, being like, oh my God, this is beautiful. You worked so hard on it. Like, I love this part for this reason. And I did also start seeing, you know, CSI videos pop up as well. So between both of these forums, I just felt like really at home and I had a really nice sense of community. It had only been, you know, a year or so since I had been on these forums and I had already seen how the fandom experience was expanding for me with fan videos. For a while, this was really just like how my fandom experience was. It was primarily in fan forums. As the years went on, I think it took a few years, at least until the people that in my circle started posting the fan videos to YouTube, you know, so it was primarily on fan forums, YouTube, literally printing out my favorite fics from fanfiction.net. I even was trying my hand at writing fic, but I was like handwriting fic in my journal. Like, I wasn't really uploading it anywhere. I uploaded like one or two things, kind of being like, oh, let me see. But then for the most part, like, I kind of kept my fic writing just like in my journal on my own private time. So one of my friends at school was into fandom before I was, and like had really introduced me to a lot of this concept of fandom. And I truly owe them like literally so much in my life. I owe to them because I don't think I would have found a lot of these things if they hadn't recommended it to me. So in 2007, Tumblr launches. I would say it probably took about a year for people to start migrating from the forums, which were kind of dying, like really dying down at this point, over to Tumblr. And then it took me until 2009 to migrate onto Tumblr. And it was because this friend was like, hey, I think you should make a Tumblr. Like, Tumblr's really, like, it seems like it's gonna be really good. Like, it's kind of booming and expanding over there. Like, you should, you know, if you want more fandom stuff, like you should migrate over to Tumblr. So I did. And once I was on Tumblr, it was really, really easy actually to like find all of my forum friends and to automatically like connect with them, which was really nice. It was like, I don't know how it was so easy. I think most people kept the same usernames. And I also don't remember really how the recommendation system was back then, or even if there was one. If one person had kept the same username, I could just like immediately go to their blog and like most of the stuff that they were reblogging was from all all of the community that was over on the forums anyways. So then it was like, okay, amazing. Let me just like follow all these people because I remember them. With Tumblr came live blogging, which was a totally new experience for me and was so much fun. Oh my God. It was like, it made me feel like we were all hanging out together, watching the episode together. And like, it made the community aspect so incredible because I would like refresh my dashboard. This is back before the dashboard automatically refreshed. So I would hard refresh the dashboard and it would be like all of my friends in the tags reacting to what I was watching in real time. And I was just, this is like the best sleepover ever. Like it felt like a big event that happened every week that I was just ecstatic about. So again, this was kind of like a new aspect of fandom, this live blogging aspect that I was like, oh my God, this is so special and I love it. At this point, 2009, people are migrating all of their videos that they used to post on the forums. They're migrating all of them over to YouTube. YouTube's presence is for fan viding, at least in my communities, is like really expanding. And so I am just like subscribing to people left and right. This video is amazing. This video is amazing. I'm like finding new videos because Tumblr, like people are cross posting to Tumblr, and there's still very much like a community aspect feel to the YouTube communities. Everybody really kind of knew each other within the fan community, or if you didn't, it was still really nice and really kind. People were not leaving nasty comments. People were not doing like ship wars stuff in the comments for my section of fandom, at least. With this migration to YouTube, I was like, oh my God, now I can try out fan bidding. Me and my Windows Movie Maker got to work. It was such a beautiful creative outlet for me because I love music so much and I am constantly listening to music, and I was constantly like creating music videos in my head basically because I consumed so much of this content, you know, like NCIS and CSI. You get to a point where like you have memorized almost every single episode, like, you know, or for the most part, it's like, you know what episodes like all of your best ship moments happen in. So you can like pull them out. I don't know. You can like pull them out of your brain or something. And so I was constantly thinking about that. I was like, all right, let's just go make some fan vids. So I kind of got into the actual fan vidding side through that. Also, as an aside, I still definitely watch fan videos to this day. Like I will go back and watch like my absolute favorites of all time, which thank God, a lot of them have not been taken down. Some of them have, which is like really devastating to my heart. But I still love fan videos. And I think that they are such a beautiful expression of creativity. There's just like something about a good fan video that can really like touch your heart, if that makes sense. My fandom break. 2013 comes around and honestly, like I took a pretty long break from fandom. I was 100% still on Tumblr, but like outside of reblogging stuff, I was not doing anything active. I was going through like a pretty awful mental patch and I didn't have the space for a lot of fandom activities anymore. And a lot of fandoms that I used to be active in, like primarily CSI and NCIS, I really didn't like the direction that the show was going in. Like CSI had kind of died for me, definitely way prior to 2013. I want to say at like the end of season 7, CSI for me, I was like, okay, like this isn't really, I think I watched season 8, if I remember correctly. I did watch season 8, but it was like, at that point, I'm like, I just am really like not into this anymore. It's not really like, it doesn't feel the same to me, or not that it doesn't feel the same or that it had to stay the same, but the things that I loved about it just seemed to like really be lacking. And I felt like they had kind of jumped the shark, so to speak. NCIS, the same, like come 2013, I don't remember what season that was, but at some point they were like, Ziva's leaving, and Ziva is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. She still to this day stays as a character that was hugely important in my life. And so, you know, when they were like, oh, she's gonna be leaving, I was like, okay, again, this show feels like it's kind of jumped the shark. It's not really for me anymore. Again, the things that I liked about it have kind of disappeared. Other example was I was super heavily into the Gossip Girl fandom, and like that show had ended in a total crash and burn. At least thankfully, the actors seem to also have hated how that show ended. A lot of these fandoms that I was really into and that I was an active participant in, they were really fizzling out for me, combined with being in a really bad mental space. So I just quietly slid out and just stopped being actively in fandom. But wait, I returned. I probably returned to active fandom around 2018. Honestly, could not tell you what I was doing. I have no idea what I was doing during those 5 years, but it certainly was not like being super active in fandom. Again, I was still very much on Tumblr, reblogging, watching some fan videos now and then, like, but I wasn't really actively reading fic or anything like that. So until 2018. 2018 was the year that I started cosplaying. It was also the year that I was watching some media that actively sparked that I would create fan works for this emotion in my brain. I watched the Clone Wars, the series, the Clone Wars, and I also watched Naruto. So both of those things really sparked, oh, I want to create transformative works for this. And I also played more video games that gave me things to think about, like headcanons, and gave me other interesting themes that I wanted to think about more deeply. So I was like, all right, let me like try and get back into fandom a little bit. And not to my surprise, fandom had drastically changed. There was huge fandom interaction on Twitter, and I have had a Twitter since I believe 2009 when I joined Twitter, and for at least a little bit after I had initially joined Twitter, like people were not talking about fandom on Twitter. But in 2018, I was like, what do you mean y'all have fandom Twitters? Like, what? Do I have to get one? It felt like I just like didn't know. I was like, I don't know how to use Twitter for fandom. And you know what? To be honest, I still don't really know how to use fandom for Twitter. Twitter is not my favorite place to like engage in fandom. I really just go there for like the fandom memes. There were Discord communities. I did not join really any of those. And honestly, like to this day, I'm still not really like in very many fan Discord communities, but it basically felt like everywhere on the internet, there was a fandom space, which was very overwhelming. I can't lie. I was very stressed about it. It kind of felt like I had to be talking on every single platform at once, and that I also had to be consuming like every possible piece of media, which to somebody who grew up in fandom, like obviously when you're in middle school, when you're in high school, you have the time to consume every tiny little piece of content related to your fandom. But coming back as an adult, I was like, I have a job. I have to cook dinner for myself at night. I don't really get very many me hours in the day, so I don't have the time to consume all of this. So it felt really overwhelming. But I am extremely lucky because I have a really close group of IRL fandom friends who I can just discourse with, like in person or over text. So since I've returned to fandom, I've honestly kind of stayed mostly private, and I've mostly stayed like in those private circles of friends, simply due to the fact that there are so many places where you can congregate. I did return to my old private fandom Tumblr, and that was really nice. And that also still feels like a not totally overwhelming space to just like fangirl in, you know? Being back in the fandom spaces over the last few years, it's definitely been like a big adjustment. And I think that I've finally now kind of like come to the place where I have like my favorite ways to engage. And again, it's mostly privately, or it's mostly in spaces like Tumblr. You know, I do have a few like private locked Twitter accounts that are for fandoms, but it's like, I don't really use those. I just use those to like scroll through memes. Like I don't interact with anybody. On the one hand, I do miss some of the community aspect and the really organized central place of fan forums where it was like, this is your, you know, big main source for everything related to X. And, you know, you have things organized into sub forums, and you have threads that are very specific, and you have specific channels for specific things, which I think that people are trying to do with Discords now. But again, I'm just in too many Discords, so it's really like a me problem. It's not a Discord problem, it's a me problem. But I really love things like AO3, Archive of Our Own. Back when everybody was on FF.net, like we dreamed of having a site like AO3. And so the fact that we have AO3 now, I'm like, this is the greatest invention ever. Shout out to AO3 because I love it so freaking much. Friends and I will do private fanfiction exchanges, which are really, really fun and very fulfilling. And I'm really interested to see where the future of fandom goes. Just seeing how much fandom has changed since 2005, I'm really interested to see where the next iteration goes. Other things I really miss, like I definitely miss the old Tumblr for sure. I really miss sites like Polyvore, RIP. I also spent a big amount of time on Polyvore where I would like create sets for characters or like create sets for OCs that I had created in like the universes that I loved. And I do miss the days where fanworks were not created for profit, but that's a whole larger discussion around like fandom and capitalism. I also deeply love things like going to cons and getting to attend panels where people talk about things like environmentalism, capitalism, and Final Fantasy VII, why we love the Mass Effect series, things like that, where those experiences give me the same type of feeling that being in fan forums back in the day gave me. It gives me like a real sense of community, discussion, and really like thought-provoking questions around these pieces of media that we all love. That's it. That's my trip down memory lane. I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what your favorite fandom space was. Mine was definitely the fan forums. Let me know what fandom like officially got you into fandom. Were you ever involved in fic writing, in vidding, any of that, making gift sets, any and all related things? Let me know. I would love to hear about it. And I will see you for another fandom discussion in next week's video. Bye.